Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Agile Solutions and Informatica GDPR webinar. We're just going to hold on for one more minute just to make sure that we've got all of our attendees, and then we'll be due to start. Thank you. Okay, hi everyone. We're back, and I think we've got most of our attendees for this morning, so I think we're good to go, and we'll just start the webinar now. So again, thank you for joining us and for this morning. We just want to do a couple of introductions for us. So my name is Melanie Parker, and I'm Principal Consultant at Agile Solutions.
Yeah, hi, I'm Stephen Davis. I'm a Senior Channels Consultant with Informatica.
Okay, so our agenda today is that we are going to just give a bit of an overview of the webinar content, and then we're going to talk about a little bit about the Agile Solutions and Informatica technology partnership and what kind of value that both of us bring to the table with that. Then I'm going to talk about some of the GDPR journeys that we've had with some of the clients and our own 6-step GDPR journey. And then I'm going to hand over to Stephen, who's going to talk about the Informatica GDPR capabilities. There will be some room for question and answers at the end of the session, and we're hoping to wrap up the webinar about 11:30 this morning. So obviously, if there's any pertinent questions as we go through this webinar, please raise them in the box to your right-hand side in the GoToWebinar. Thank you. Okay, so to start off with, Agile Solutions and Informatica have been in partnership for well over 15 years now, and this is about really bringing together the value of sort of thought leadership around data management, core capabilities, and some of the actual Gartner Top Magic Quadrant technology capabilities that Informatica have on offer. So in terms of the disciplines that both Stephen and I work in at the moment, we kind of cover most of the areas around data strategy, data governance, some areas of security, data modernization and cloud, and indeed customer intelligence. So what we mean by customer intelligence is things like single customer view, master data management, and that type of capability. So I'll begin then to take us through the GDPR journey. So most of you have probably got to the point where you are either having a sigh of relief, or you've recognised that you're just at the beginning of your journey and you've got a lot more to do. So what do we mean by GDPR in the sense of where we're at? So the regulation came into effect on the 25th of May, so roughly about 8 weeks ago. On top of that, we had the GDPR regulation embedded into the new UK Data Protection Act of 2018. So this achieved royal assent on the 23rd of May, around about the same timelines. And this is really just to ensure that any of the principles of GDPR is enshrined in UK law. On top of that, most of the people were waiting with bated breath to find out about ICO headlines, who was going to be the first customer to get fined, and who was the top client that potentially would be affected by some heavy fines. But to be fair, there have been a few headline news, but we're still waiting to find out if it appears under GDPR or whether it's the old UK Data Protection Act 1998. But it's not all that. GDPR will be making headroom for the anticipated release of the PICR regulation, otherwise known as e-privacy regulations. This is going through some highlights and some controversy at the moment, but we are anticipating that this will be released early in 2019 and will be in position to sort of underpin what GDPR is here to do. So this is quite funny because some of the GDPR misconceptions that I've heard from some clients or from some customers that have actually spoken to me around what GDPR is and isn't. You could read that for yourself, but yes, so it just depends on what sort of dynamic that you're coming from. So GDPR is a project. Well, yes, it is a project, but certainly it's now been transformed into a business as usual operation environment. So just because you started it off as a project doesn't mean to say that you're now at the end of that completion. Similarly, I've had a lot of people tell me that GDPR is policy-based. So indeed, we've had a lot of policy development, such as new data protection policies, privacy statements, privacy notices, new contracts of employment, new contracts and terms and conditions with your suppliers and your third-party entities. But it's not just about the policy development. You really need to have that underpinning data management structure to really think about how you're going to monitor those policies, implement those policies, and actually demonstrate that they're effective. Similarly, again, GDPR is only about security. So yes, there's been a lot of security firms out there talking about your encryption and all your firewalls and ensuring that your estate is indeed secure. And whilst that is one part of GDPR, it's certainly not its entirety. So yes, I would say that security is indeed a very necessary wrapper on the GDPR programme. Again, GDPR doesn't apply to anyone outside of the EU or the EEA. So this is one that's come up for the book. So I'm quite sure a lot of you that subscribe to sort of US magazines, so I won't name names, on the day the 25th of May came around, a lot of people were blocked from using sort of US websites, etc. So I don't really think that they've got their heads around just the impact on the fact that this should be an internationally recognised data protection regulation and how it's going to affect their customers in the European Union. And least but not last, GDPR requires consent for all processing activities. So I'm quite sure your inboxes are full of people asking you to consent to membership, to signing up to online subscriptions, etc., etc. I have heard some horror stories around why and how we've been asked for consent, but actually it's only one of several lawful bases for processing data, and consent is actually in the minority of that. So this is just a really little funny cartoon that talks about the reason for obtaining consent. For those of you that don't actually obtain consent for the use of cookies, maybe on some of the websites, a lot of people may be asking how to read your privacy notice. Can they turn off cookies? Do they really need it if it's strictly necessary? But what they don't understand is, therefore, what is the impact of the performance of their online browsing history in that case. So a lot of people probably be testing what it's like with and without cookies that they choose. So what are some of the GDPR challenges that we've faced? So I wouldn't say that these are post-GDPR challenges. I'd say that these were challenges that faced us before May 25th and indeed still now, depending on the journey we're on. So showing what we do with the data is the biggest issue, because do you actually know what you hold? If you've done any sort of data audit, you've maybe had a snapshot in time. But how do you actually keep that up to date with changing processes, maybe changing business models? And how is it secured and where is it? So multitude of repositories. We've got data protection impact assessments for those of you that have been doing some of these already. This goes back to privacy by design, and you have this embedded within the sort of program scope. Does this indeed affect any of your in-flight work at the moment? And if so, does it allude to GDPR and is it cross-referenced? If you want to find out quickly and efficiently what your data subject's rights are, well, we know that there are 6 rights of the GDPR for individuals. However, there are now subjective rules around speed. So if we've only got 72 hours now to report a data breach, or we now have 20 business days or working days to actually turn around a subject access request, how do we do that quickly and how do we do that efficiently if we don't really fully understand where all our information is? So we've went through the pain and the process of really maybe doing some recommissioning exercises. We have done some consent management work, but actually how do you keep those consents in sync? And what I mean by that is, we're all humans. We have human behaviour. We do change our minds, and therefore at the speed of how customers and clients and indeed B2B initiatives, how do we actually make sure that if someone does change their mind, that we can manage their consent effectively? And the last one over there is securing is the priority. So as I said before, security is indeed a huge undertaking. Encryption, they do have a lot of standards around this space. For those of you, again, that subscribe to either ISO 27001 or Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, it's a body of work in its own right and definitely needs a lot of investment and thinking about how you're going to go around that. So this is one of the activities and right through experience of what we were trying to understand, what the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office, was really trying to get us to understand with regards to a data audit. And what they term this as is the record of processing. And ideally, albeit in a spreadsheet format at the moment, this is really to highlight to organisations and business areas about just exactly how they go about processing their information. Do they know per business function exactly what categories of individuals, what categories of data, and indeed right down to the minutiae of what personal data they do use against which function. So it's quite a granular spreadsheet. I can imagine if you've a quite large organisation with multiple fractions and multiple business units, that this could get quite an unwielding task, and certainly you would need a lot of resources and sort of business analysis tasks to undertake that. But the reality of it is, how do we map back what data we use, to which system, how do we secure it, can we categorise it, and to which line of business does it affect? So what are the issues with undertaking records of processing or data audits, or what are the information challenges around that? Well, what we find quite quickly is that data lineage doesn't exist without automation. So you may have spreadsheets and different access databases, etc., across your estate that's trying to all do the same job. It may have came from a program perspective or a single initiative. However, as we all know, spreadsheets are very difficult to keep in sync with each other. Priorities change, resources intercept each other, and they can leave. So how do you keep that knowledge transfer together? Indeed, if you then decide that actually I'm going to change a process because you don't quite like it, or you think you need to tighten it up with regards to either a security issue or just best practice and efficiency, again, how do you keep the data lineage in sync with the synchronization of change to that process? Because a lot of people would have invested in sort of BPNN technology, but then again, back to the spreadsheets of the data audit, how do you make sure that the data flows actually sync back into what it is you actually do? And to more of a point, the ICO would want to get you to demonstrate that you can provide that lineage. Change management, so this is just as a general concept. So the culture of an organisation, it's already challenging to do other things such as digital transformation. You've got lots of other initiatives probably going on at the moment in-house. However, the fact is that the speed of data demand is changing. The data fabric, the data environment is getting more complex. It's getting much more demanding. So how do you get people culturally to really take data protection seriously when all of that's happening? The single version of the truth is still siloed. So yes, you may be working on master data management projects or initiatives, but even these things can still lose sight of the wider enterprise approach. So therefore, it's increasingly harder to try and get that golden record. Business as usual, operational efficiency drops. And what we mean by that is, if you're still trying to track down manually how you're going to do data lineage, you kind of lose sight of what you're there to do in terms of the day job sometimes. So ultimately, you need to think about how you can keep your hands on data it's accessible in the right format at any one time, and it's down to really good housekeeping before we actually affect the day-to-day job. And as I said before, policy development is an ongoing task and will certainly need a lot of annual review and implementation. But again, if you're doing that manually with manual intervention, how do you actually measure how successful those policies are? And therefore, the real issue is, how do you drive new behaviours in data management? So it may be a data protection regulation, but actually it's data management behaviour and how you actually keep this data in sync, and how you carry on with best practice, and how you can ensure that this works. So at Agile Solutions, we have an idea that it's actually a triple constraint. So as much as technology can help you assess some of the automation, can actually help you discover your information, help to manage it and protect it, actually you really are dependent on a lot of people and process at the same time. So you need to have a strategy of where you need to get to and understand the people and the skills that you need, and then assess from a risk-based approach what kind of processes that you're going to tackle first. We have, under some of the offerings from Agile Solutions as part of our partnership, it's called the 6-step GDPR journey. Now, this was set up for a lot of clients that were just at the beginning of the GDPR journey, and this was pre-May 25th. But actually, it's, as I say, it's an iterative approach. So you could be at any point on this journey as you are now, or maybe you're completely finished some of the steps that we would articulate here, but then there may be some steps that you actually haven't done at all, so you would have to go back to the circle. What I would point out is that even though we have an assessment in a planning stage, and then it's down to technology and delivery stage, we are not lawyers, so we don't do any of the legal ratification that you would need. So we're not here really to say, you know, here's your indemnity against that compliance issue. So you would still need separate legal services for that. But we certainly help to manage and do offer some sort of support services and management around that whole stack, if indeed that's what you wanted to do. And now I'm going to hand you over to Stephen, who's going to talk about some of the GDPR capabilities that we have within the Informatica sphere.
Okay, yeah, thanks Mel for that. Just wanted to, what we're seeing here is just an illustration provided by Agile of Informatica's product set, and just how it breaks down in some different areas that you might need to do for data management. And like Mel says, really good data management is is going to enable you to achieve your GDPR compliance, and it's really going to it's actually very positive, because it's going to enable you to have best practice in your organization around data management and fulfill the obligations of the regulation. So if I just talk a little bit about Informatica then. So Informatica has been around for 25 years. We're the market leader in data management. So, you know, in terms of our product set, Gartner measures us in 5 different Magic Quadrants. We're actually the leader in those Magic Quadrants, so not just in the leaders section, we are the leader. So I think that's a good position. Whilst, you know, knowing that you've got really good technology is important, as Mel said, it's one of the components of the solution. But yeah, I think we've proved that we've got good technology, and in terms of customer service, we do pride ourselves on our the service we provide to our clients in terms of the support. And our GDPR solution set is award-winning. We've got some really innovative products, which is why we're getting these really good ratings from Gartner. In terms of the solution set, as you saw briefly on the wheel, it is modular, and the idea is it's based on the customer's needs. So you can start at a particular place depending on the initiative you're running within your organization, and then you can expand out to other areas. So you don't need to take the whole solution set. You don't need to take the whole platform in one go. It's sort of bite-sized chunks, really, as and when you need it. And as you'd expect, the licensing is flexible. So you can buy it as you need it. I was saying, like, the benefits beyond GDPR then. Really, it's around effective data management. So instead of using manual approaches with spreadsheets and SQL coding or whatever it might be, Informatica provides these automated tools to enable you to be much more efficient and to reduce your time to market. And then if you know your customers better and you have a single view of the truth, this will improve the experience that your customers have and will improve your bottom line. And with Informatica, it's about providing trusted, governed data. So really, data is the lifeblood of an organization, and this is what Informatica focuses on, and as the last 25 years has been focused on. And by focusing on the data and having trusted and governed data, you can really pave the way for digital transformation. So with GDPR then, like I say, it's got the ability for you to transform the way your organization manages data and really creates this basis for digital transformation. So the idea is to have a holistic approach that includes, that sort of captures intelligence from the data. We call it metadata, and then automates the tasks that you need to do and provides this automated approach to governance and compliance and delivers data that is trusted, secured, and governed. So GDPR compliance sets organizations up to succeed as the new regulations arise. So GDPR is not the first regulation that's come out to affect management of data. Customers have been dealing with this for some time now, different regulations. But really, it means in the future you're going to be well set as other privacy regulations come up, like Mel was mentioning. And it's a big picture. So treating your data as a strategic asset with data management is going to be good for your organization. If you look at the businesses that are thriving and really succeeding in this sort of new environment that we have out there, this new sort of generational market shift that's occurred, this new environment, it's those that understand that data is strategic and are able to leverage that in their businesses. Having a good reputation for data privacy is really important. And I'm sure you've seen, the headlines unfortunate headlines that where organizations have data breaches, and it just, it really affects the reputation of those organizations. So by having the data privacy by design is going to be really good for your organizations. Of course, data quality is important, increasing data quality and operational efficiency, but being able to understand the data quality and prioritize which areas to improve first, which will give the biggest business benefits. And of course, avoiding fines, reputational damage, better customer experience, and loyalty with trusted data. So I'm just going to talk about one of our customers in the financial services areas. This is a Bank of Ireland. So just a background. So Bank of Ireland is a traditional bank based in Ireland, but they do have operations in other countries, specifically the UK. They have significant operations here. They're the market leader in consumer wealth, business and corporate banking in Ireland. 250 branches, 1,650 self-service devices, and a lot of activity using mobile and tablets, as you'd expect with a modern bank. Although it has got this historic background. So obviously they had to meet the regulatory compliance requirements, but then there's also around operational efficiency, and improving the customer experience is really important to them. So, banking's a highly regulated market, and GDPR is just one of the regulations that they're having to deal with. So, BCBS 239 after the financial crash in 2008, that was a regulation that came in, and the banks have been having to contend with different regulations for many years now. So there's a list of some of the other ones that they're involved with. So the Bank of Ireland's approach is around their core customer data program, and they wanted to support activities using things like robotics, BPO, customer contact, and also their core system updates. So they have this concept of this customer data factory. When they're onboarding customers, they want to analyze that data. They want to provide self-service access to their staff, and they're consuming data from internally and also from external data sources. So their approach was to basically continue as is with GDPR, with minimum compliance, but then sort of seize the opportunity around data, so they could get complete, clean, and connected data, get a single view of their customers, Often financial services organizations, they'll have like it could be if it's an insurance company, like a policy-based view if they've got multiple different policy systems, rather than what they really want to see is this single view of the customer and have the focus being on the customer rather than a sort of siloed data within the organization. And of course, security is really, really important for the reputation of the bank, that they have good security. So really, there's the wheel here showing the different the product set for Informatica, and if we look at GDPR, then you could say there's a couple. I mentioned earlier that you can dive in at different points, and different customers will choose to address GDPR depending on their own business priorities. So I'm going to go through two different areas here, which are the sort of foundation for the GDPR journey. So the first one is around defining and discovering your data, and Informatica has a couple of products in this area. One is called Axon, and one is called Enterprise Data Catalog. The second area is around managing and protecting your data. So this is, for instance, consent mastering. So when you're gathering the consents from your customers, understanding what consents they've given, maybe masking the data so that you can improve security by not having sensitive data visible in systems where it doesn't need to be visible, and then archiving data to handle things like the subject access requests and handling those processing of that. So let's take a look then at the first area, which is going to be the define and discover. So really there's two different approaches that Informatica provides for data governance. There's the top-down approach, which uses our Axon product. So this is where you've got your business subject matter experts. We're providing a tool that enables them to collaborate across the enterprise, so they can provide their input. They're experts in their specific functional areas, perhaps, and they've been able to cooperate together and to model what's happening in the business using this sort of nice graphical-based tool. So that's sort of the definition, and then that cascades down. The other approach is to start with the data and catalog the data. So, like, let's scan the data. What do we have in the organization? What exists? What data types exist? And that is more of a sort of, I guess you could say it's more technical, but it's still very much about the data. And you need to have an easy to understand interface to be able to explore the data. And our data catalog product, you could say it's like a Google-like search for the enterprise. So that it's providing access to your key data, your metadata in this Google-like search environment. But the two products work together. So it means, once you've discovered what data you have in your organization, you can then populate your higher level abstracted business model, which doesn't need to include all of the technical data. It needs to have the sort of key data elements that the business users care about. So it's quite nice that those two things work together. Okay. And then Mel was talking about lineage. So we would split this out into business and technical lineage. So with the Axon product, like I was saying, the business users, there's certain attributes that they care about. They won't need to know all of the technical detail. So what Axon will provide you is this. You can see on the screen here. There's a little screenshot from Axon at the top. A flow from left to right, where you've got different systems. It could be like database systems, or even access databases or Excel spreadsheets. And you can see as the data flows through, you can like highlight a field and see how that moves through the flow. With the more physical model, which you get with the catalog, you're actually getting a lot more technical detail here. So this will even look at things like if you've got mappings in data warehouse tools, like it doesn't have to be Informatica, it could be other products you're using to do your data integration or your extract transform loads into your data warehouses, for instance. We can actually go in and look at the calculations and what's happening, which that can be important if the regulator's asking you, well, how did you come up with this particular value on the report? You can work back and find how that was populated. So in terms of like the organisation, then, I mean, Mel was sharing some detail around the register of processing activities. So that's, if you like, that will sit somewhere in the organisation. And this, if you think of this as your organisation, you've got a whole load of nodes out there. Like these could be departments, people, and they're managing lots of different aspects. So they might have reports, they might be dealing with processes, they might have glossaries of terms for particular departments, for particular functions. There's different regulations that affect different departments. So all this massive information is out there, but then you need to connect this together. So how would you do that? And then furthermore, it needs to be accessible. So that's one of the problems of the siloed approach, where you've got individual spreadsheets or access databases. It's just not connected. So the organization, if you think about an organization, it's set up in silos. You have the HR department, you have like IT. But the whole approach with Axon, or even our catalog product, is to bring this together in an easily accessible way.
So obviously, Steve was talking about data definitions. You've got a lot of technical data, but a lot of business data that's needed for the business users to understand. So in terms of the data governance space and where Agile can help in terms of the actual understanding of what data governance means, this is just quite a crude example of saying, this is one of the challenges and the issues that we've got, even identifying what the definitive markers are of a particular data set or a data entity. Obviously, they're both green, they both look the same if you were to give them a description, but obviously when you lift the hood, they're completely separate items. So how do we do that in the business context? So obviously, having catalogues and having workflow and data stewardship and mechanisms technically to manage this stuff, we really need to think about as a discipline, and what's appropriate to you as your organisation is how do we actually define what those data entities are. What does that data mean to me, especially if you've got very much conflicting data entities and lots of acronyms and these kind of things, because I know that it's different from client to client as in what they mean by a particular term. So underneath all of this, you certainly need to be able to authorize your information, classify it under a data governance framework, which is really what Agile Solutions can help with.
Okay. So what I was just talking about was the define and discover piece. So that's, cataloging the data on the technical level and then providing the definition at the business level as well, of interacting between those two. So some organizations start with that approach for addressing GDPR, but then, there's other areas you could start as well. So some clients are concerned around consent, and they've started at that part of the regulation and given that a lot of focus because that's important to their business. There's also the masking of data. So if people are using, like test data in production, then if they're using private data in production, then that's not permitted by the GDPR regulation. So data masking then becomes important. And also archival. So Mel was talking about subject access requests and handling that. Having some automated tools to do that is really important. So with GDPR then, in terms of consent management, in the past it was really straightforward because there was just a simple opt-in, opt-out flag. But now there's a huge difference in the landscape. You've got to prove that you've gathered consents. There's privacy by default. There's a whole range of different issues here you can see that need to be considered, and that really changes things dramatically. And we need to have a holistic approach now to consent management. But it can bring a lot of value as well, because it can help you to understand your customers better. So in terms of the information challenge then, this is something that clients talk to us about. Is so, well, where would we manage our consents? So if you've got some different systems here in your organization, HR systems or ERP or CRM, you might think a place to start would perhaps store the consents locally in those systems. However, this is a problem, because really, if you've got many applications, you're going to have to potentially modify all of those applications, which is no mean feat really to do that. There's no single view of the consent. So how would you, if you're going to run a marketing campaign, capture, how would you gather that consent information from all these different applications? Things like consistency is compromised, the rights are not synchronized. It really is. I know that some clients do start with this, and they'll choose a particular system, and like, I don't know, for instance, a CRM system, and add in additional field for consent. But it really, it's a starting point, and I think we need something that's much more holistic as a solution. Also, there's no governance around that. So what Informatica has developed then, on top of our master data management product, is really, you could call it an accelerator for managing consent. So we have our Customer 360 solution, which sits on our Master Data Management Hub. And because our Master Data Management Hub is a generic MDM solution, so you can handle any type of data with that. It could be customer data, it could be product data, supplier data. But with our Customer 360 solution, what we're doing is providing the data model and workflow and so on that's relevant for managing customer data. And really that's an extension of that is to handle subject access requests, so handling the consent data. So there's the Customer 360, there's the data quality, and there's the workflow, and all of that taken together gives you a single view of the data subject and the consents. And then all the rights are centralized in this one place. And a bit like with the Axon product, we're not taking all of the data and putting it into the MDM hub. That's not the purpose of MDM. With MDM, you're going to take the relevant parts that you need to drive your business. So whatever those are, and they will come from the different systems that you have in your business, and there'll be different components from different systems that will give you the best golden record. So that's how you would build up that hub. So you're not sort of copying lots and lots of data. You're just providing this nice resource of the quality data in one place that you can then use for managing your subject rights and doing your consent management. So to give you an example then of how this would work, just a different view. So you've got some data sources on your left-hand side there, and then you capture the consent. So Mel mentioned we've all been receiving these emails, saying what consents do you give for what, for which purposes. So once that's being captured, that data can then be stored in the data model in our master data management solution. This is party data or customer data, along with data from the other systems, and then you get this 360-degree view of your customer and the consents that they've provided. So at this point, then, once you have that and you've gathered those consents, which lots of companies have done now, you can then use that information and basically query the master data management system to find out, what consents are being given depending on the use case, depending on the department. So, the finance department will need different information, perhaps to the marketing department. So, the idea is you use that as a resource for then driving whatever business applications you need to drive from that. So an example customer that are doing this is Carrefour. They're a retailer, European retailer, and they've gone and captured all of the consents, and they're using this to execute marketing campaigns and also to do analysis of customer data on the data lake. So they can get that consent data from the master data management system, from the Informatica master data management system, and then make sure that the campaigns they're delivering to their customers are the ones that they've agreed to, and also that they're relevant to the customer. So maybe it's around what they've been purchasing and what they think an upsell might be for that particular customer. But then they've asked for that information. So this is really a win-win because for Carrefour, because they're able to improve their sales by targeting customers with relevant information, and then also make sure they comply with the regulation. So I think that's the point I'd like to really make here. It's about finding that win-win sweet spot with the GDPR. It's not about it's a regulation, we just got to comply with it. So I think that's quite a good example there with Carrefour marketing. So back to the wheel then. So we looked at define and discover with Axon and Enterprise Data Catalog. The managing and protect, we're talking about consent mastering there. Another two areas I'll cover will be data masking and data archival. So with data masking then, where this becomes important, as I mentioned earlier, is if you need to permanently alter sensitive data, then this, for instance, this could be used for testing. So if you've got, say, an offshore testing facility and they're testing your applications, they need good quality data in order to do that testing, but they can't use the production data. That's just not permitted. I mean, really, if they were doing this before, they shouldn't have been doing it. So the regulation is, it's quite right that this has come in to prohibit that. I mean, actually, they can use the production data, but you would have had to have gathered consent for it, which is just not practical. People aren't going to do that. So really, you just can't use production data in a test environment. And doing the data masking is actually more complex than you might first imagine, because if this example here is looking at credit card details. If you look at some customer data with customer IDs, names, where they live, the credit card, there's lots of different ways that you might want to use to mask the data. So, for instance, some of the things we provide are like shuffling a particular column, like employee ID column in this example. You could do a substitution for names from a dictionary. So we provide like dictionaries of names. You might just decide for the city just to use a constant for all of the values. And then with the credit card, it is a special technique to manage credit cards. So the credit card number itself is, for a start, it could be a credit or debit card. So there's differences there, how your application might handle the processing of that data. Maybe there's different charges that you need to apply for a credit card compared to a debit card. There's different schemes like American Express or Visa or Mastercard, and you might have different rules for those schemes. There's the check digit as well that needs to be calculated. So, and also even the issuing bank. So that's all encoded into that number. And we have the special credit card technique to handle that. But that's one of, let's say maybe like 50 different options that you have. And the best thing about using the tool-based approach, so using Informatica's test data management approach for data masking, is you don't have to develop this yourself. So the alternative is to do scripting and to do hand coding, but then that for your testing, but then that's just introducing more potential problems. Surely if you're doing testing, you want to be able to like narrow the sort of areas where you could have software issues. So, this is providing them out of the box testing routines that you can configure using our graphical environment and meet the requirements of GDPR, able to provide high quality test data for your application test teams, and manage this as a business process. Provision the data on a regular basis, whatever you need to do. So that's the data masking in the test data management scenario. So the other area then, Mel was talking earlier about subject access requests, and that there's timescales for being able for handling those. So there's Informatica has our data archival solution, which actually this has got a lot of business benefits even before the regulation, because if you think about it, if you have your production systems and storing lots of say customer data in there, or it could be like contract data or data around loans, if you're building up that information in your production systems over time, it's going to be slowing those systems down. So really you need to have some data management in place to extract the data from those production systems when it's no longer needed there. I don't know, maybe if you've got a loan system, but once the loan has been paid off, you might want to take the loan information out of the production system and store it somewhere else in an archive, for instance. So this is an automated tool set for doing this. Now, the misconception here is that archiving data can be done manually by using SQL scripting, but there's some complexities in the real world that means it's not very practical to do that. For instance, managing legal holds. So if there's a court case, you could be instructed, I'm sure as you know, as an organisation, that you must retain the data, and there could be quite severe penalties, if you delete this data and it's the subject of a legal action. So our software product handles all of this automatically. So even though you might have retention periods set up for data, if there's a legal hold, then the data will not be deleted and will not be purged, even if you ask the system to do that for you. And then just even still not looking at the GDPR aspect, really, this is more than just the business benefits of managing your data. Taking that data out of the production environment, we put it inside a highly compressed data vault. So this uses a sort of different format, like a columnar format. So you can actually store this file, and this could be stored on a cloud provider, for instance, AWS. So it's a way of migrating to the cloud and transforming your business as well. And then that compressed data file enables you to access the information, but it means you've still got the information. It might be a bit slower to access it, but it's not slowing down your key production systems. So in terms of GDPR, then what you can do is you can actually purge the data. So however you wanted to set this up, you could have at the call center, if someone calls in and says, "Well, I want to have my data erased," so you can then mark that data for erasure, and then the data archive product will do that, notwithstanding the legal holds and the other legal basis you might have for keeping that data. So that can all be managed as part of the product. So yeah, it could be a call center, it could be a self-service portal, that would provide that facility. So yeah, hopefully that's given you some ideas around where customers have been addressing their GDPR, the regulatory requirements with the different initiatives. So the define and discover approach, or the manage and protect, looking at consent mastering, look at masking and archival. And there's a whole range of other products that we have, and it's really what are your business priorities in terms of what you're looking to achieve, and then sort of mapping those products on with with our partners Agile to help you do that as part of their process. So
okay, Stephen, so thank you for that. I know that we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, but just quickly I want to take you back to our 6-step journey, just to sort of refresh your mind as to where we think that the technology stack or architecture actually fits within the offering. So actually, really what we're looking at here is step 3 within our AIM framework. So this would really be after you've designed what you want to store, what you want to manage, as Stephen said, around, depending on your business model, what angle do you want to deliver this, and then really looking at the assessment of which part of the Informatica wheel and the capability stack, if you like, actually fits within that business challenge or priority. So Agile Solutions and Informatica can come together to really assess what would step 3 be in this case, and then look at how we would then implement that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to open it up to the floor in terms of any questions. I'll just give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone can type some questions within the box. So please raise your hand if you want to. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have one question that's come in around data security and handling sensitive data. So obviously, what would Informatica's approach be to this? So I was talking around the data masking piece, which is improving data security because it's masking personal information, but also another product we have, if we could go back to the wheel again, is something called Secure at Source. So yeah, that's good. So like with the catalog product, you're scanning your information to find out what is there. So that's the catalog. With Secure at Source, it's slightly different. You're still scanning the data, but the purpose is to discover where sensitive data resides within your organization. And like with all Informatica products, we provide an automated approach to do this with intelligence built in to find the different types of personally identifiable information. So and it could be like credit card numbers, it could be different pieces of information that would identify customer. It could be like like first name, last name, date of birth or something. If we see that, then that can identify a customer. So we need to flag that up. So it's about doing this, understanding the risk that you have within your organization. What's the risk level? Where's the personal information? And then presenting that in an easy to understand dashboard that is has a security focus. So that's really where we come in there with the Secure at Source product. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. We have one more question which has come in, and it's all to do with for those companies. I mean, obviously we're talking about huge, complicated organisations and lots of legacy applications, etc. But for those companies which are on a limited budget, what would be the most versatile project to do as sort of proof of concept or proof of value for GDPR? What do we think of that? I mean, personally, for me, I think if you're starting off with your consent management piece, just understanding what data you're allowed to retain, that's a bit of a housekeeping exercise, just to find out, if you've got 7 million records as opposed to 70 million records, what's the difference in terms of the data management complexity behind that? But Stephen, you might have another viewpoint.
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I mean, I think the discovery approach seems quite popular for, like doing a scan and finding out what data aspects you have. And that ties in with like data quality, because really it's like when I was mentioning the secure at source product where it's looking for like the sensitive data, but really you could also look and find out, well, what is my data quality? Because that could actually be really having a big impact on your organization. With in whatever area, if I would say it's your marketing, you could be losing quite a lot of money by sending out information to the wrong addresses, or if you're sending out brochures and things to the wrong addresses. So that's often an area that people will address if they've got a limited budget. Yeah, it's like a data quality discovery exercise, or scanning their data, all of their data, and finding out where the security problems are.
If I'll just give a couple of minutes for any more questions. If you just think about maybe some of the challenges that you're faced with at the moment, if you're in a sort of program mode or investments or anything that's a particular business challenge. Okay, thank you everyone. We don't have any more questions at the moment, but please feel free to contact us offline if you indeed have any other questions around GDPR or indeed the delivery of it in terms of technology, delivery, implementation. Meanwhile, we do have a lot of information available on all of the products on that Informatica wheel, and indeed some of the data governance capabilities and frameworks around governance that we can help you with. So please reach out to us in terms of email. We have an available website as well. At some point we're going to have an interactive wheel that you can actually go on and download some videos that you can actually watch and go through, so that you get a bit more of a deep dive into the functionality and capability of that. But if we don't have any more questions, then I think we'll wrap up, and there'll be a recording of this event that you can then refer back to if you missed any of today's session. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot.